Hi, Michael. Thank you for joining my first episode today. I'm very happy to see you and hope you're doing well. How's the cold?
It's good. It's good to be here. Good to see you again. Well, I saw you last week and over virtual means, but I caught a little bit of a cold. I I guess I've been busy and the weather's been very up and down in Chicago, especially recently. Because if it's April, you expect the weather to sort of get a little bit better. And in Chicago, I feel like there's always like it does get better, and then there's like a really like the last freeze or something like that where it snows once or twice in April, and then after that, actually the weather loosens up a little bit. But I think I caught the tail end of that, and
Oh, man.
I'm being exposed to a lot of people nowadays, and so yeah, but I feel good enough. I feel good enough to talk and be here. So
Oh, yeah. I hope you feel better soon. And yeah, one thing I was really surprised when I first got to Chicago was snow on an April day, which I would never expect in other places in the world. So
I don't. It's not great. Not a big fan.
definitely. Yeah. Well, um, glad you could make it today. Today, a lot of people who are just listening to our first episode don't know how we first met, but originally, before me coming to USC, I was at University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and that's where I met Michael. And since then, I guess we've been living our lives. And recently, Michael has made a big decision in his life to pursue his own thing. So. Very excited to be hearing his journey, and I just was very inspired and wanted to follow his journey as he begins a big chapter of his life. So this is kind of me following his journey, journaling what his learnings are, and uh, I'll be able to kind of be in touch with you every week to see where you're at and how you have been growing and also deciding on how your future business will head to. So, with that said, yeah, just very curious. I know that before making your decision to start your thing, you had a really prestigious role at a really good company. For those who don't know, it's Bain and Company, one of the top strategy consulting firms in the entire world, and a very difficult position to get into, but also a very difficult role to kind of pivot away from. So, just curious, when did this whole idea spark?
Yeah, it's a good question. Also, that was a great intro. Made it seem real nice. And it was. So I think like a lot of people coming out of college it's a tough time, right? Because you're expected to, for the most part, right? You're expected to sort of land a job. You're expected to know, in essence what you want to do, and like you're supposed to have some things figured out. Which thankfully I did. I sort of followed the very traditional path of getting a corporate job after college. I happened to be able to go into consulting, which I think in hindsight was an incredible decision, an incredible journey. Like I got very lucky in some regards. I learned a ton. It was not easy all the time, as I'm sure I'm sure people expect that. The decision largely came, going into consulting was a lot of just I didn't know what I wanted to do, which I think is a very typical sort of happening right after college. And so I figured with consulting, right, like the very professional answer is like you get exposed to a lot of different industries, you get exposed to a lot of different problems, which is all true. And so I figured it would be a great place to start my career. After a couple of years, so I was there right around 3 years. And so I was promoted once, and I ended my career there as a senior associate consultant. I think there came a point where I started to realize, first off, the restaurant industry is fascinating to me. I think I'm not like the most foodie type person. Like I don't go out and search for Michelin star restaurants or anything like that. I don't particularly like I don't like go search for like the most incredible foods. But I think I'm a big fan of the experience that you get at restaurants, like the details that go behind it, which includes obviously the food, but it also includes like the type of service that you get, like the way that the seating arrangements work. Like everything about the restaurant industry was always very fascinating to me. And so at a certain point, I realized when one of the great things about Bain is that they offer you the chance to go on what's called an externship for about 5 or 6 months. And essentially, you just go to a separate company of your choice. You do all the recruiting by yourself. You figure out all the details. You negotiate, the pay and things like that. And then they let you go for about 5 or 6 months on leave of absence, and just say, hey, you can go work at whatever company of your choice for that amount of time. I ended up working at Wingstop at their global headquarters in Dallas, and I had an incredible time. I mean, the people were just so nice. I mean, they were all driven. They were very hardworking. They were doing great. Like the results were showing, and so I think that sort of confirmed my belief that I wanted to be in this industry. And then one of my biggest qualms about Chicago in general is that there's not enough good Korean food. I think it's actually getting a lot better, and there's a lot of people sort of coming into the space. But I've always just been very frustrated because downtown Chicago, for it being the third largest city in the US, just doesn't get as much love from Korean food. And obviously, if you go to the suburbs, and there is actually a good amount of Korean people that live up in the suburbs, and there is a lot of good Korean restaurants. But I think as a whole, it could use a little bit more. And I think there definitely is an opportunity here. And so at a certain point, I was like, if I felt this strongly about it for the last 3 or 4 years living in Chicago,
Mhm.
I might as well just take a jump of faith and try it out for myself.
No, yeah. One thing I can attest to is the love Michael has for food. I remember back when we were on campus, we would we would set a day every week. I believe it was a Wednesday, and we would explore the different eateries around campus. And every time, number one, he does eat a lot, and number two, he can enjoy the food. Really well. He really enjoys the food, and you can see it when you're eating with him. So it was really fascinating for me when I first heard that he made the decision to kind of start thinking about his focus on the food industry as he was well, as you were kind of going through your career journey as well. So no, yeah, so happy to see all those things lined up, and I guess it really comes back to what you should be doing something that you really love doing. So now that you are in the trenches, now you've kind of left your corporate role. Now your day-to-day life is just 24/7 food. How does that feel?
Yeah, it feels good. I mean, it feels right. I One of the things that I was nervous about is like it's always scary making the decision, and sort of leading up to making the decision, I think was actually more scary than once I decided to commit and do it. Because when you in the moments leading up to it, you have all these thoughts about like, oh, like I had such a great start to an amazing career, and like, the trajectory was good, and you have all these opportunities, and you're sort of throwing it down the drain. You're putting a pause on your career supposedly. So I was very nervous about it before I made the decision. But once you make the decision, right? Once I made the decision, I think it wasn't as scary as I thought it would be, and the process was seamless. Which just goes to show you are very easily replaceable, which I know all the people say, especially if you're in some sort of financial services or consulting. Um, I will say the lifestyle is very different, obviously. And I guess there's two parts to that. The first is the income that I'm getting is significantly less. In order to sustain myself while I am pursuing this sort of my own thing, is I am working a couple of part-time restaurant jobs.
Wow.
So those are minimum wage plus tips for the ones where I'm doing like serving and waiting on tables. And so the pay gap is obviously very big, and my schedule is also very different, where I probably work the same amount if not more hours. It's just a very different type of work, right? Whereas when I was in consulting, after a full days of work, I would be mentally exhausted and really drained and just be ready to go to bed. Nowadays, I'm physically exhausted and I just collapse, and it's a very different kind of tired. But there is an element of, I think this is right for me. I think that I made the right decision. There is no place in my head where I'm like, wow, I wish I would have not left, or I wish I did something differently. I think I'm on the right track. Everything is aligned to what I am going towards. I will say we are just getting started, and me and my partner, one of my good friends, but we're just getting started. So I think the real trenches will begin once we actually get up and running and start launching. And I'm sure we'll have an array of things to think about. But so far, so good.
Wow. That's something interesting you pointed out was I guess you starting off with your tinkling with your love for food and your decision to kind of do an externship at Wingstop and now making that jump into going directly into the food industry. A lot of people I feel would think that, oh, like you were a consultant and I guess when you exit or pivot, usually people go for maybe a tech startup or a huge fortune company. And compared to that, you decided to go to a food industry, which I would think that a lot of people would have thought was very interesting or also have a few concerns. Any episodes on that where people were asking why the food industry and how did that kind of make you feel emotionally as well?
Yeah, I'll say generally speaking, you're right. I think all the people that have left consulting while I was there have generally gone into strategy and ops roles. You can go into places like private equity. You can obviously go into startups. I think for me, and people go into the food industry all the time, just not necessarily, down, it's like in a different direction, probably, and more a corporate role. I will say though that everybody that I spoke to was actually very supportive. I've gotten a lot more support than I had initially reacted or like it has anticipated because I think a lot of people can get behind the idea that like if this is really what I want to do and like I get to pursue a dream and like I'm taking a lot of risk, but at the end of the day, it's my decision and a lot of the people that I have around me, and I think I've been blessed with a lot of great people around me, but they were very supportive and everybody understands what I'm doing, right? So it's like they know it's not going to be glamorous. They know it's not going to be easy. They know the lifestyle that I have chosen is probably going to require more work, more stress, more everything. But I think they respect the fact that I'm willing to take the leap and I'm willing to take on a little bit of risk. And the goodbye email that I sent to the office was generally very well received.
Mm,
So in that sense, I've received a lot of support. Again, at a certain point, I think it just becomes a matter of like I didn't care as much about what other people had wanted and thought, right? If that was the case, then I wouldn't have chosen to neglect and just jump away from, excuse me, a really great job. I think it was more so, what do I spend a lot of my time besides work? Like, where do what do I think about, right? What do I care about? Like, what's in my head all the time? And most of the time it was just about food. And like, if I were to do this restaurant, like, what would I want to do? What's the menu? What's the branding? What's the design? Like, what kind of food products do I have? How do you price things? Like, I think that was in my mind all the time, regardless of whether I was at work or not. And so, at a certain point, I think there was just nothing else to really think about. I think it was just I'm going all in, or I'm really not.
yeah. And no, yeah, for me, as someone who've known you for quite a few years now, and yeah, I had full faith in for you to move into your next chapter, and I'm sure that a lot of people around you, who whether those were your colleagues or also friends from since you were young or college friends, whoever those people are, I believe had a lot of support and the ability of your ability to also um, take on a new challenge in your life. And just curious to hear how what happened when you kind of shared your aspirations. Did anything change? Were people reaching out to help, or was it mostly you needing to reach out to a lot of new people and I guess find new network to kind of learn from as well?
It's a great question. I actually think it's weird because once I made that decision and once I started vocalizing it to everybody, I actually got a lot of support. And I guess a couple of, like I just talked about the couple part-time jobs, but the reason why I was able to get those jobs was actually a lot of networking and just telling people and asking people about, hey, like I want to do this thing. I think I want to get a little bit more experience in the restaurant industry just because I don't actually have any hands-on experience in sort of learning the day-to-day of what it takes to actually operate and own one. I would love for the opportunity to get to work there. And so I was able to get in contact with a couple of people that have restaurants, and they were like, "Hey, if you want to come and learn with us and from us, then we'd love to have you." And so a lot of things earlier when I said things aligned to the path that I had chosen, it's not like a, I guess it's sort of like manifestation
Mhm.
in a sense. But once I really just vocalized it and said, hey, this is like my decision. No one's going to tell me no from this point. It's not a question. I'm going to go down this path. I would love to get some help. Are you willing to help me? There's a lot more people that said yes than I'd initially expected. And so I think it just goes to show like a lot of people are willing to help. I think you just have to be willing to ask the right questions at the right time in the right tone to the right people. And if you're willing to, at this point, if I'm willing to take such a big risk, I'm going to ask for all the help that I can get from anybody that I know. And most of the time they're very willing to help.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think as someone who's kind of been in and out of those decisions and during the journey of that decision making, I think I definitely had that internal thought. And I think I also mentioned it to Michael as well that I was super excited for him for those changes in his life. Then again, how did you meet your partner then? Your uh,
My
key
business.
person, business partner who you'll be in this journey with you together.
Yeah, his name is Jimmy. We went to college together. We've been good friends for quite a while. I think we got really close during COVID.
Hmm.
And this is when I know, we also got a little closer during COVID too, Paul. But
Definitely.
I think it was the time when we were all locked down, and Jimmy and his roommate at the time lived very close. It was like 100 feet away from my own apartment. And so when you can't really see anybody, but you have someone that lives, 100 feet in front of you, then you end up spending a lot of time together. And I think Jimmy has always wanted to also do like a separate thing, like he wanted to do his own thing as well. I think things just ended up working out where um, I was like, hey, like I want to do this food thing, and if you want to do it with me, like I'd love to have you. And so I think we've always been talking about doing something together. I think we've never really had a concrete idea until recently. And so once we got the idea, I think it was just, a matter of let's take it up and run with it.
Hmm. Yeah. No, yeah. I also know Jimmy, so I know what a quality human being he is as well. So for me, I think I definitely see the connection of those two great, hardworking people who are both very smart and very dedicated. So yeah, I guess you mentioned about sure the launch is still ahead, so we still haven't launched. However, for me, yeah, I just can't wait to see what how you both kind of pivot around the different scenarios and the feedback you get from the launch. So yeah, I just can't wait. So I'm super excited about that. But with that said, how has your weekly kind of schedule been? I know you mentioned about doing those two part-time jobs, working late with your different tastings and things like that. Anything new that you've seen this week?
Yeah, so my schedule now is my weekends are a little bit shifted. Well, they've shifted by one day. So now my weekend is Sunday and Mondays. Generally on Tuesday through Thursday, I'll work during lunch at a fast casual restaurant. And then Wednesday through Saturday at night, I'll work at a full scale, like a full service restaurant. And I have different roles in both. And then usually that the dinner time, the Wednesday through Saturday, the dinner time service will run from like 3:30 in the afternoon until probably around 11 or so at
Wow.
night. And so then I get home around probably 11:30.
Wow.
So generally what that means is the times that I have is Sunday, Monday, and then Tuesday during night, and then Friday during the mornings and Saturday during the mornings, technically. So we've been having tastings. So we've been asking some of our friend groups to come in and taste our food and give us feedback, which has been incredibly helpful. But we do that typically on Saturday mornings. And then Friday mornings will either be spent prepping, or it'll be spent prepping for Saturday. Or it'll be if we have an order in, usually because we get a lot of orders in for Friday. So we'll do a lot of work around that on Fridays. What I will say is it takes a ton of time to prep.
Mm,
And right now, a thing that we're learning is well, let me back up. What's great about sort of catering and having these orders ready beforehand is that we know exactly how much quantity of items to buy, especially because some of the items that we're making and have in the fridge are perishable. So that means we can't keep a whole, ton of supply always ready and ready to go. So what's nice is that we have sort of the visibility when once we get the orders of like, okay, we're going to need roughly about this much. We should buy this. The problem is neither Jimmy or I nor I have a car, and so a lot of the times what we're doing, we're sourcing right now from different places because of quite honestly cost and convenience. And so it's a little bit trickier than we had imagined to get the right supplies at the right time, especially when I'm working at night and when I'm working in like the morning. So like Wednesday, Thursday, when I'm working from, like 10 in the morning until 11 at night, it's hard for me to find time to go grocery shopping. So Jimmy will usually take over grocery shopping during those days. And then I'll take over, whatever we need to do otherwise. So there's that aspect. So there's like the grocery shopping aspect, and then there's a prepping aspect, and there's actual cooking process, which is, I guess, the basic fundamentals of running a kitchen, right? Or cooking in general. The item that we've chosen, right, which is kimbap, is notorious for being very hands-on. There's a lot of ingredients that you need to prep separately. You need to have all of them. They need to be ready at pretty much the same time in order for you to roll. So there's a lot of work that goes into buying all those the ingredients and prepping those.
No.
So what Jimmy and I are working on now is just making sure that our systems and like the way that we operate is more solidified and we know exactly what we're going to get from what.
Hmm.
Um, it is definitely, it seems, I don't want to say easy, and nothing sounds easy, but it seems easier than probably doing other types of food. But I will say we are quickly learning that it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of planning to get things right. And the whole concept of what we're doing is we want it to be fast and we want it to be reliable, and like we want to make sure that the operations is very stable. And and so part of that definitely means that we need to be really on our A game when it comes to having things prepped and having things ready.
Yeah, no, seems like a lot of work, and especially since it's the early stages of the business, I guess a lot of the bulk of the work are done between you two, whether that's probably uh, recipe creation, also operations, as you mentioned, making sure all the orders or tasting menus are happening. I'm guessing some marketing as well for the launch. So there's a lot of these different components moving. What's something that has been the most difficult, I guess, out of those in your sense?
Yeah, it's a good question. If I were to walk through what we've been doing for the past couple months, is we've been prioritizing the product, right? The food. Our fundamental belief is that if the food is good, right, and the food has to be good. Like if the food is not good, no, I guess you can get away with fantastic marketing and you can get to a certain point, but we don't want to do that, right? We want our food to taste as good as possible. We want it to be authentic. We want it to be, authentic to also, to us as much as to the Korean culture and things like that. So our focus was largely on the product. Everything else was basically like, hey, like if we have time for it, we will do it, but we're not going to waste that much time on it because right now we just need to make sure that people really like our food.
Mhm.
At this point, we are closer than we were before, which I guess that makes sense, but we're actually pretty close. Like we've made quite a few modifications. We've taken a lot of the feedback that we've gotten. We've iterated quite a few times on the recipes. And at this point, the reactions and sort of the feedback that we've been getting is like we're pretty close. Like people are very happy with what they've been getting, and we have sort of our twist on things, and we have the things that we want incorporated into our food and our product. Now, what we're realizing is we need to focus on the other aspects of the business. One of them being the branding. Branding is very difficult. We realized, and maybe I don't know, maybe it's not. Maybe we're doing it right now, and so it feels very difficult. We've been working with another friend who does graphic design for a logo, and one of the things that we're struggling with, and we being me and Jimmy, is we need to give like a clear direction and sort of a clear idea behind the brand that we represent. I think because we've been so focused on the food itself, we haven't really thought about what kind of branding do we want to have for the food, right? Because as much as the food is important, once you get that down, that's like table stakes, right? Once you have that down, your attention needs to go into things like operations, things like marketing, right? If you don't have good marketing, if you don't have good advertising, if you don't have good operations, like it doesn't matter, right? It's like you have to have both, and both arguably are just as important as each other. Obviously, once you have the food down and the recipes are down, then you need to pivot your attention to how do you make this scalable and how do you make this work. So what we're doing right now is we're sitting down and saying, what does our brand represent?
Mhm.
right? And that will flow through to everything, right? Like our packaging, our logos, right? The design that we have of the interior of the store, and like everything that we do will have this branding incorporated into it. And it's a little bit more challenging than we had anticipated because we had initially been like, if we have the food, then like it'll naturally come to us. It doesn't naturally come to you, and so
Mm,
it's not to us. And so I think we're just spending a lot of time going, what is it that we are, right? Like, how can
mm,
we be authentic to ourselves? Because that's our big thing, right? We want to be
mm,
authentic to ourselves while still appealing to a certain group of people, right?
mm.
Otherwise, you can't just like scribble something down and be like, this is, I wrote it, and therefore it's authentic to me. But it
Mhm,
has to resonate with other people, which I think the story is interesting. And, we were putting a lot of emphasis there.
mm,
I think that's what's top of mind for me this week because honestly, it's a little bit more difficult than we anticipated, and now we have the ability and the time to focus that and place that as a priority.
mm,
Whereas before, I think it was more so like we still need to make our food better. Nothing else matters.
mm. Do you mind sharing what are some of the questions you and Jimmy have been asking each other during the process of kind of finding your identity for the brand?
Yeah, so it's like there's a couple thoughts, right? One is we want to, at the end of the day, like the big thing for us is to be authentic to ourselves, right?
Mm,
What that means is one, the whole point of doing this is to bring more Korean food to Chicago. That's the bottom line, right? There again, like I said, there are plenty of places that are opening up. I work at one of them that's a new Korean restaurant. Like the opportunity is there, and people are also recognizing that, which means that we're headed in the right direction.
mm,
I think the thing for us is just how do we stay true to ourselves while still making things catchy enough for the general public to appeal to it somewhat?
mhm,
And then what is the story that we want to convey, right? Usually there's like some sort of slogan, or usually there's something that's like, hey, this is what we represent, and
mhm,
like this is what we want. We're basically setting the direction of where we want to go with our brand. And we just don't know what that is yet. And so what we've been doing, just quite honestly, is just asking some of our friends, like, hey, when you think about us and the journey that we've been taking on, and these are people that have known us for a long time. When you think about us in general, first off, what do you think about us, right? What comes to mind, right? Because branding, as much as it is, it's not just a logo, it's not just some pretty font on a page. It's like a
mhm,
representation of who you are. And when people think about this brand in particular, it's like the thought and the feelings that you get when you think about the brand.
mhm.
And so for us, I think it's just we're trying to nail down what exactly that is because objectively it's hard to measure that as yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because who you are, but like you can't like I don't know how others view me in a sense of like how do I make this? And this sounds terrible, but like how do we sell who we are the best, right?
Mm,
That's the whole I think that's the whole premise. And so a lot of the questions that we've been asking so far is just like what do we want to stand for? Like what do we want to take this brand in? And like at the end of the day, our long-term goal is to have a lot of restaurants, right? A lot of chains and like, or maybe not chains, but like a lot of restaurants. There's a lot of concepts we want to do. But for now, we just have to focus on one. And
mm,
so how do we make this really appealing to us and also to others?
mm. Yeah. I think nowadays, there's so many new ideas, as you mentioned, concept stores kind of testing out their ideas out in the cities, especially. So I think it's really important to have some sort of meaning or something to stand for behind the product or service that we kind of provide out there. I'm curious. One thing that caught my attention was the word authenticity, and I guess in the context that you mentioned, it was kind of being authentic myself and how that could be transferable to the brand. I'm also curious for the taste wise too, since authentic Korean food may be delicious to the Korean taste bud, but also it could be slightly different for a foreigner. Have you been considering that? Is there a ratio that you might be taking into consideration when making your recipe?
Yeah, so at the base root of it all, we wanted to serve the Korean taste buds, right? Korean
Mm,
people. Because
mm,
at the end of the day, that's what I wanted, right? I wanted food that
mhm,
I wanted to eat. And that's
mhm,
it, right? Whether that's Korean or not, I mean that's really
mm,
up to us, I guess. But I wanted food that I could recognize as Korean food, not the fusion stuff, right? Fusion's
mm,
great, by the way. I have nothing against fusion. It's just not something I want to do. I think fusion tastes delicious, but it doesn't taste like it's not like it doesn't remind me of home, right? It's not like, oh, if I'm really feeling nostalgic, right? And this is not what we're pushing, but like generally speaking, if I'm feeling nostalgic, I'm not going to grab fusion food, right? That's not really a thing. Fusion is like exciting. It's something new. It's something different.
Hmm.
Um, and so we didn't really want to go down the fusion route. And so for
Hmm.
us, being authentic to the flavors means that we stay with the Korean flavors. Now,
Hmm.
within that, right, there's also the spectrum of how intense certain things are in terms of flavor, right? As an
Hmm.
example, we have bulgogi kimbap, right, which is like one of the most iconic, the one of the most classic kimbap rolls out there. Some of the feedback that we've been getting from Korean people is that it's seasoned well. People really like the seasoning on it.
Hmm.
It's not too salty, it's not too sweet, it's well balanced, it's good. For non-Koreans, the feedback that we've been getting is that it tastes a little bit bland. Like there's not enough flavor.
Hmm.
They said that it could use a little bit more salt, it could use some sauces, it could use a little bit more flavor. Our whole premise again is that we're going to try to target the people that are most like us, right? So
Hmm.
when we taste it, does it taste good? And then the hope is that like if you start with a niche, right? We can't if you try to please everybody, you're going to please nobody. And if you
Hmm.
try to capture everybody in the market, you're going to capture nobody. And so the point is, can we start with a small enough niche and really get the niche to really like our food, right? That's all we care about. Can we get 100 people to really, really love our food? And if we
Hmm.
can do that, and if they're so into it that they continue to buy from us, if we get regulars from it, then hopefully they'll spread the word, and there will be enough people. That's our what we like to call hypothesis. That enough people will like that, and again, this goes to the root of like we think our food has to be good, right? There are always going to be differences in preferences when it comes to taste and flavors, but I think there at the base root there is good, delicious food, and there is food that you go, oh, I don't really know if this is like if it's delicious, right? Subjectively.
Yeah.
So again, our whole premise right now is that we want to focus on flavors that we really like, and generally that's been leaning a little bit towards more as the Korean taste buds. As an example, again, like tuna salad, which isn't we don't call it tuna salad in Korea, but like here, the tuna kimbap that we have is basically canned tuna mixed with mayo.
Hmm.
But when you don't put tuna salad and you put tuna on the label, people expect raw tuna. And so these
Oh,
are the cultural differences and some of the just the very minor details, but it's important, right? Because the expectation management is a big part of this game. So
yeah.
if people are expecting one thing and then you give them another, if it's really good, then usually it's okay. But people want to buy what they expect, right? Not
Yeah.
what's a surprise to them.
Yeah. Exactly. And one thing I really like about the process that you've kind of explained to me just right now is that number one, you have a very clear idea of what you want to kind of achieve in the short term. So that's authentic tasting for that would be approved by, let's say, a original Korean or a Korean descent. But then again, you're not ignoring what the consumers are also voicing about. You're taking note of that stuff. You're keeping track of that, so that when it comes to the time where those kind of decisions um, or inputs might need to be incorporated, that you have that in the database. But I just really like how these days definitely user or customer feedback is really important, but when you're always reiterating with the most recent feedback, you start to kind of lose track of like where this all started from. And I think it could become a mesh of just everyone's idea and not really satisfying a group of people. And for any business, I think you really need to start out being able to have a really good following in a small niche, and then it's better to have those, really dedicated 100 people than having like a wide in and out 1,000 users. So super cool that like in your head that process is happening where you're making sure you're grounded with your thoughts, but also you're just making sure to be open-minded of those feedback as well.
Yeah, I would definitely say too. I like the point that you said about we are very attuned to all the feedback, right? So we definitely take it with a grain of salt. Honestly, like we don't just take everyone's feedback and just be
Yeah.
like, "Oh, we're going to change every little bit of our recipe." But we definitely pay attention to it, right? As an example, with the bulgogi thing, we're going to implement some sauces at a certain point, right? Because the thing with bulgogi is there's a couple. So the fundamentals of kimbap is it can't be too if there's too much moisture,
Mm.
the seaweed will rip apart and tear apart. So you
Yeah.
can't have that much moisture. The problem is beef and pork even tends to get very dry when you take a lot of the moisture out of it, which makes sense, right? And so the beef bulgogi, one of the first pieces of feedback that we got when we were using just regular, just sort of the lean cuts of beef is that it was very dry.
Mm.
The feedback from others that were non-Korean was like, hey, it's not flavorful enough. Plus, it's dry. So then we're like, okay, maybe a sauce is right the right solution to that. And so we are developing sauces as well. But what's nice about sauces is that we're not going to just put it on the thing, right? We're going to give it to you as a side. If you want to use it, great. If you don't, then you don't have to. And that way you can sort of get around it while keeping true to yourself, we think. Um, but yeah, I would say we receive a lot of feedback, right? There's a lot of feedback, and most of them are generally positive at this point in time. But a lot of it at the beginning was like, hey, like maybe this would be better. Like, hey, I don't understand why you did it like this. So there are certain pieces of feedback that we really like because we didn't even think about it. But there's also others that we just like, okay, maybe this is a preference thing. Maybe let's just keep it for now and then see if we keep hearing it. I think just the general rule of thumb is like if you continue to hear the same type of feedback, then there's some sort of truth there to
Yeah.
it. And so then we consider making some of the changes. But usually that bar will take a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah, it definitely seems. I'm not in any way knowledgeable in that area of recipe development, but it's definitely really interesting to hear about how there's always a constant loop of feedback, need for kind of adjustment, and also consideration of how even I feel maybe differences or changes in trend or consumer taste per se as well. So. It's really cool that right now we have someone really close to me working towards a vision where we are grounded with uh, providing one of the most authentic Korean food, especially in Chicago, where it's not as prevalent as it is in LA. So yeah, I'm just very happy to see that.
Yeah, we're trying. We're trying. We're learning as we go. We don't, I mean, just like anybody else, we don't have much experience here, so we are going off of business fundamental, like business basics. We just want to do the basics right,
Mhm.
and anything else is like a cherry on top. But the basic belief is that if you have a good product, there will be demand. If there is good enough demand, then you need to meet the demand. So your supply has to be good. And then in order for your supply to be good, you need to make sure that your operations are good. It's like a full circle, and you just need to make sure if your basics are set, then like you should be okay. There's a lot of stuff I'm sure from a business perspective that we also need to be thinking about, but we don't know it yet. So we are not.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think what I'm really excited about is continuing to see those moments of growth and also new lessons as you kind of go through your day to day and with these weekly check-ins. Today we kind of went over the basics of where it all started, what kind of decisions went through in your mind to make that big jump and also kind of the initial current stages of finding your identity with the company, preparing the menu and development of those menu recipes. So very interesting, and I'm definitely sure that it's a lot of work, and of course, a lot of it today was really summarized and as well, but very interested to see what you also kind of face next week and come back to kind of share about and talk about what new learnings you have there as well. So thank you, Michael, once again. Yeah, I hope you feel really get better soon and so that we can get back into rolling and you could work towards being able to create the best kimbap in Chicago.
Yeah, man, thank you. I'm glad we're doing this. I think it'll be good for me too. There's a lot of things that we're learning throughout this process, and so glad someone is willing to spend the time to record some of this. And I'm sure when we look back on it, we'll be like, wow, we did big. At least we're trying. And we're trying with the best that we know right now, and that's good enough for us.
Yeah, very excited and thank you for your time. I'll see
All
you
right,
next week.
see ya.